Preface. At 5:21 on an ordinary afternoon, I was staring at one word on a glowing screen, and that word was destroying me. Seen. Not a reply. Not a question. Not even an insult. Just a timestamp and a receipt, hanging under my last message like a tombstone. Seen. 27 minutes ago. I know it was 27 minutes, because I checked. I checked the way an addict checks an empty bag, knowing there's nothing in it, checking anyway. I reread the whole conversation 4 times. I told myself I didn't care. And then, with the calm of a man who absolutely, catastrophically cared, I typed 2 words and hit send. Be respectful. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I've had to sit with it for years. A woman I had never met. A woman who had followed me first, who had opened the door herself, went quiet on me for less than half an hour. And my response, my masterstroke, was to send her a written demand for respect. From a stranger, over text. A man begging a woman he'd known for one afternoon to respect him in writing, so she could screenshot it, so her group chat could enjoy it, so the evidence of exactly what I was could be preserved forever. She never replied. Of course she never replied. There was nothing left to reply to. I had answered every question she could ever have about me in 2 words. This is a book about texting women. Instagram, WhatsApp, the apps, whatever glowing rectangle the game moves to next. The principals don't care about the platform. But I need to be honest with you before we start, because this book has a secret, and the secret is this. It is not really a book about texting at all. It's a book about you. It's about what you are, what you're pretending to be, and the exact, pixel-perfect way your phone betrays the difference to every woman you message. Because here is the first hard truth, and it's the one this whole book stands on. A text message is not a container for words. It is an X-ray. She is not reading what you wrote. She is reading what you are. And most men, good men, smart men, men with degrees and jobs and gym memberships, are walking around with a graveyard in their pocket. Hundreds of dead conversations, threads that started warm and went cold. Women who laughed, who replied in seconds, who followed first, and then evaporated mid-sentence like they'd been raptured. And these men cannot, for the life of them, figure out what they did wrong. I was one of them. For years, and I tried everything, and I mean everything, under the sun. I tried being nice, properly nice, good morning texts, genuine questions, honest interest, straight to the point, respectful, patient. You know what it got me? Bored, blocked, left unseen by women who told their friends I was sweet. Being sweet, I learned, is a flavor women enjoy in desserts and discard in men. So I swung the other way. I found the internet gurus, the ones with sunglasses and rented sports cars, and I bought the lines, the teasing, the negs, the push and pull, the cocky scripts. I memorized them like scripture. And you know what that got me? The conversation I just described. A borrowed knife, held wrong, and a wound in my own hand. Because a tactic without the man behind it isn't a tactic. It's a costume. And women can see through costumes the way you can see through glass. 2 religions. The Church of Nice and the Church of Tactics. I tied faithfully at both, and both left me alone with my phone at 2 a.m, scrolling up through the archaeology of my own failure, wondering what was wrong with me. And I have to tell you how deep this thing actually ran, because if you're holding this book, I suspect it runs the same depth in you. This was never a hobby going badly. This was my identity on trial. Every single time for 15 years. One scene could ruin an entire day. Not dent it, ruin it. Wake up fine, send a message, watch it die, and feel the whole day drain out of me like someone pulled a plug. And on paper I was winning. The career, the accomplishments, money in the bank, a life other men would trade for. Didn't matter. None of it ever mattered, because the scoreboard I actually lived on was a stranger's reply. And that scoreboard could go dark at any moment without warning or appeal. Worse, the disease didn't stay in the phone. It followed me into every room I entered. I performed for everyone, even other men, cracking jokes that landed awkward because they were auditions, working for laughs from people whose approval I didn't even need, terrified of one thing above all, that if I just stood there and was myself, normal, quiet, unperforming, I would be boring. And if I was boring, I would be nothing. If you know that terror, this book was written with your name on it. This book is what I found when I finally stopped asking, what's the magic message, and started asking the real questions, the ugly ones, the ones that actually have answers. What am I transmitting? And why does her silence have this much power over me in the first place? It goes deep, because shallow already failed you. We're going to open up the science, the psychology of the wound itself, why rejection registers in your brain as physical pain, and why 15 years of achievement never moved the needle. The evolutionary logic of her inbox, the attention auction you never knew you entered, the reason her brain is built to delete ambiguous men, the slot machine, the app installed in your skull, and why the scene receipt was engineered to hurt. We're going to do autopsies on the nice text, on the copied neg, on the exact messages you're sending right now, this week, that are killing you. And then we're going to rebuild both machines, the man and the phone, the frame, the grammar, the Instagram game as it actually exists today, the screening, because not every woman deserves your plan, the protocol for the spiral, so a stranger's thumb can never delete a day of your life again, and a 30-day program so concrete you'll have no excuse left but your own thumbs, because I'm not going to leave you where most books leave you, nodding along to philosophy with no idea what to actually type. They're going to call a book like this toxic. Let them. I've read the sweet advice. Just be yourself, just be honest, the right one will come. That advice is a lullaby, and it's sung by people who have never watched their own message die with a receipt on it. I'd rather hand you the truth with blood still on it than sing you to sleep. But there's one wall in this book, and I built it on purpose, and it doesn't move. Clear eyes, never contempt. We are going to be brutally honest about women, about the game some of them run, the validation farming, the orbits they keep men in, the brutal math of their inboxes. No halos here. But we don't beg, and we don't abuse. We don't send the paragraph, and we don't send the poison. A man who harasses a woman through a screen is the same species as the man who begs through one. Both of them are telling her she owes them something she never owed them. Everything in this book works without lying to anyone, and anything that only works as a lie is a weak man's trick that detonates on a timer. I wrote this for the man I was at 5:21 that afternoon, thumb hovering over the worst 2 words of his life. I wrote it for you, brother, because I know the graveyard's in your pocket right now, and I know you've checked it today. Let's open it up. The first body we're going to examine is mine. Chapter 1. The Graveyard in Your Pocket. Every man's phone tells his story better than he does. Scroll back far enough in mine, and you can watch a decade of failure evolve, like fossils in rock. 2 distinct eras, 2 distinct ways of dying. I want to walk you through both, because I promise you're living in one of them right now. Era 1, I call the interviewer. In my interviewer years, I texted women the way an honest man fills out a tax form. Complete sentences, direct questions, genuine interest, plainly stated. Where are you from? What do you study? How was your day? I replied within seconds, because I was raised to believe that promptness is a virtue and games are for children. If she told me about her day, I asked follow-up questions. If she seemed sad, I sent paragraphs of support. I was, by every metric my mother taught me, doing everything right. And I was dying. Slowly, politely, and visibly dying. There was a girl from a coffee shop. I'll spare you her name because names don't matter in a graveyard, who gave me her number with a real smile, actual interest, the warm kind you can't fake. I texted her for 6 weeks. 6 weeks of good conversation, of how was your day, of memes and honest answers, and me lying in bed composing thoughtful replies like a Victorian gentleman writing letters to the front. 6 weeks in which I never once felt the ground shift, never once made her feel anything except pleasantly attended to, and in week 7 she posted a photo with a boyfriend. A guy she'd met 11 days earlier. 11 days. He asked her out on day 2. I was still warming up. I had built her a pen pal, and he had built her a Friday night, and she chose the Friday night, because women always choose the Friday night. I called her fake for it, privately, bitterly, to my ceiling at 2 a.m. It took me years to admit the truth. She wasn't fake. She was accurate. She had 2 applicants. One applied for a job in her life. The other one filed paperwork indefinitely. That was the pattern of the whole era. Women didn't hate me. Hate would have required me to register. They enjoyed me the way you enjoy a podcast. Pleasant background audio, consumed at their convenience, forgotten mid-episode with no guilt whatsoever. The threads didn't end. They just stopped. Scene. 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 A cemetery where every headstone says he was very nice. So I did what a certain kind of man does when nice fails. I went looking for the opposite. And the internet was waiting for me with open arms and a checkout page. Era 2. The Borrowed Knife. At 2 a.m. It's always 2 a.m. I bought a texting course from a man whose entire personality was sunglasses. And I'll be honest with you, because this book only works if I'm honest. It felt incredible. For the first time, someone was saying the quiet thing out loud. Stop being so available. Stop complimenting. Tease her. Flip the script. Make her chase. Here are the lines. And there were lines, brother, pages of them, scripts with fill-in-the-blank names, like legal documents. I memorized them the way a drowning man memorizes the location of the lifeboat, and armed with my new knife, I walked into the conversation I told you about in the preface, the one that ends with "be respectful." Let me show you the whole body this time, cut by cut, because this autopsy is the most useful thing I own. A young woman followed me first. Let me repeat that, because I want you to feel the size of the gift I was handed. She followed me first. She requested. In the attention economy we're going to dissect in the coming chapters, a woman following a man first is a green light so bright that blind men 3 streets over could see it. The door wasn't just unlocked, she was holding it open. So naturally, I walked up to that open door and began conducting a census interview. Do we know each other? No. Are you from around here? Yes. Never saw you here before. What do you study or do you work? I want you to notice what I was doing, because you've done it too. I was administering a form. Question, answer, question, answer. She was already laughing at me. She sent the crying, laughing faces early, and I read them as delight. They were not delight. They were a girl watching a man show up to a party with a clipboard. But here's where it gets interesting. Mid-interview, my new training kicked in. She mentioned she was studying computer science, and I deployed my first tease. You don't seem like the type. The girls in that field are usually nerds, and you look too chill for it. And brother, it worked. Watch the film closely, because this is the one moment in the entire conversation where I was alive. She perked up. She played. Yeah, well, I'm the chillest, she said. Do you see what she did there? She caught the ball and threw it back. That's a woman entering a game. One good tease. Playful, light, aimed at the surface of her identity, with a compliment hiding inside it. And the interview corpse sat up and started dancing. And then I killed it. Because I didn't have calibration, I had a script, and the script said keep going. Oh, you're the chill one? I said. Then you must have a perfect GPA. Still fine. Barely. She's still playing along. And she does something that women rarely do with strangers. She gets real. Drops the banter for a second. No, honestly, I barely pass, she says. And she tells me her actual grades, which, by the way, were good. Genuinely good. She handed me a small, true, slightly vulnerable thing about herself. In card games, this is called showing your hand. In human beings, it's called trust, the first molecule of it, and it is precious. The script did not have a page for trust. The script said, neg. So I looked at her good grades and typed, that's it? That low? Do you hear the sound that just made? That's not a tease. A tease has a wink built into its architecture. It punches sideways at the surface, and it invites her to punch back. This punched down at something real she had just trusted me with. And this is the part that makes me laugh now, darkly. It wasn't even accurate. Her grades were good. So the message she received wasn't, you're being teased by a confident man. The message she received was, this man either can't read numbers or wants me to feel small. Either way, defective. And she responded the way healthy women respond to defective men. She pushed back hard with a test. What the hell are you, Einstein? Brother, that question was a lifeline. I know it doesn't look like one. It looks like anger. And it was a little angry, but it was also the last open door in the building. She was checking. Is there a man in there, or just a script? The right answer was easy, and it was self-amused honesty. Something like, Einstein? I barely survived college. I just like watching you get worked up. Own the absurdity. Laugh at yourself without shrinking. Flip it back to play. That answer says the teasing comes from confidence, not from a wound. Instead, I sent you with a laughing emoji, a one-word deflection, hiding behind a cartoon face. The emoji was doing what emojis do for nervous men. It was standing in front of me like a bodyguard, signaling, please read this as confident, because I no longer am. And then, silence. Scene. 27 minutes of me staring at that receipt while something hot and ancient rose in my chest. And I've since learned exactly what that feeling is and where it comes from, and we'll get to the science of it. But in that moment, all I knew was that a stranger's silence was physically hurting me, and the pain needed somewhere to go. Be respectful. The neg didn't kill me. Understand that. The neg wounded me, but negs only wound. Be respectful is what killed me, because in 2 words it confessed everything the whole cocky performance was built to hide. It told her the mask was a mask. It told her that her silence had power over me. Total power, main line to the nervous system power. It told her that the man who'd been teasing her from above was actually beneath her, looking up, begging. A lecture is just a beg wearing a suit. And the deepest cut, the one I most need you to see. I demanded from a stranger the exact thing I was refusing to give myself. Respect. If I'd had my own, her silence couldn't have burned me. I didn't, so it did, and I invoiced her for it. She never replied. She didn't need to. Somewhere, that screenshot may still live in a group chat, and honestly, fair. And I want to tell you about the rest of that day, because this is the part no guru with sunglasses ever talks about. The evening was gone. I skipped the gym. I snapped at a friend who'd done nothing. I reread the thread at dinner, at midnight, at 1 in the morning, prosecuting and re-prosecuting the case. And I woke up the next day with the ash of it still in my mouth. A stranger, a girl I had never met and never would, had reached through a screen with one thumb and switched off an entire day of my one and only life. And here's the sentence I most need you to hear. It wasn't the first day. By that point, silences like hers had been costing me days a week for 15 years. Here's what took me years to understand, and it's the sentence this whole chapter exists to deliver. Both of my eras were the same disease. The interviewer and the knife wielder look like opposites. One supplicates with kindness, one supplicates with cruelty, but underneath they are the same man doing the same thing, performing for an outcome he desperately needs, and leaking that desperation through every pixel. The nice guy needs her to reply. The fake jerk needs her to reply. And need itself, is the thing that kills. You cannot fix need by changing costumes. I know, because I owned both costumes, and I died in both. So before we talk about her at all, her inbox, her games, her side of the glass, and there's a harder question waiting, and it's not about her. It's about why a stranger's silence could reach into my chest and ruin a day of my life. Because until you understand that machine, brother, every tactic you learn is a gun in a shaking hand. Chapter 2. Why one scene can ruin your whole day. Let's do the math that should have made me laugh, and instead ran my life for 15 years. On one side of the equation, a stranger's thumb. A girl I'd never met, whose voice I'd never heard, whose existence I'd been aware of for a few hours, declining to move her thumb 3 inches across a piece of glass. On the other side, my entire nervous system, my mood, my appetite, my workout, my focus at work, my patience with my friends, my ability to enjoy a single hour of the only Tuesday I would ever get with that date on it. That was the trade. Her thumb against my day. And her thumb won. Every time, for a decade and a half, her thumb won. Now here's the detail that proves how broken the machine was. If a man ignored my message, a colleague, a friend, a stranger, I forgot about it in 4 seconds. Same app, same glass, same silence. No pain. So the pain was never coming from the silence. The silence was empty. The pain was coming from somewhere inside me, and the message was just the trigger that fired it. That's the first thing I need you to accept, and I know it's bitter. Nobody has ever hurt you through a phone. The phone is a mirror, and what hurts is what the mirror shows. So what's inside the machine? Why does her silence, specifically, land like a wound? Turns out science has been mapping this exact circuitry, and what it found should change how you talk to yourself forever. Start with a psychologist named Mark Leary and an idea called sociometer theory. For most of your life, you've been told self-esteem is like a fuel tank. Some men have a full one, some have a leak. Fill yours up with affirmations. Leary's research says that's wrong. Self-esteem isn't a tank, it's a gauge, a meter. And the thing it meters is your standing with other people. How accepted, how valued, how wanted you currently believe you are. It evolved for a brutal reason. For millions of years, a human being cut off from the tribe was a dead human being. Exclusion wasn't sad, it was fatal. So evolution installed an alarm system that screams when your acceptance seems to drop. That scream is what you feel when the scene sits there, and the reply never comes. It's not weakness. It's not you being dramatic. It's a Stone Age fire alarm going off in a modern building, wired straight to a piece of glass it was never designed to read. And it gets more physical than that. A neuroscientist named Naomi Eisenberger put people in a brain scanner and had them play a rigged computer ball tossing game where the other players suddenly stopped passing to them. Trivial, right? A cartoon ball. Except their brains didn't think so. The regions that lit up, the dorsal anterior cingulate among them, are part of the same alarm network that fires for physical pain. Follow-up work found something almost comic. Over-the-counter painkillers, plain acetaminophen, measurably dulled the ache of social rejection. Sit with that. Rejection is not like pain. Rejection runs on pain's wiring. When her silence hurt you, brother, you were not being a baby, you were being a mammal. Every man who ever told you to just brush it off was asking you to argue with your own anatomy. So the alarm is real, it's ancient, and it's legitimate hardware. Then why doesn't every man spiral like we do? Why does one man shrug off a scene in 8 seconds while another loses the day? Because a gauge has to be calibrated. And here's where my story stops being biology and becomes biography. Somewhere along the way, for me, it was the teenage years, the unchosen years, standing at the edge of rooms watching other boys get picked. I wired my gauge to a single input. Not acceptance in general. Female approval, specifically. Her reply became the needle. All of it. Am I worthy? Am I a man? Do I get to feel good today? Routed through one channel, and that channel was owned by strangers and operated by thumbs. Once you see the wiring, everything about my life makes sense, including the part that confused me the most. The achievements changed nothing. And I achieved, brother. I did the thing men like us do. I made a bet. The bet said, I can't get chosen now, but I'll build myself into a man who must be chosen. Degrees, career, money, the respect of serious people. I held up my end of that bet completely, and the machine paid out nothing because the gauge was never wired to read accomplishment. You cannot promotion your way out of a wound that was never about your resume. I stood on top of a small mountain I'd spent 15 years building, with a phone in my hand, checking whether a girl had replied, feeling exactly like the boy at the edge of the room. The mountain was real, it just wasn't connected to anything. And now the confession that goes one layer deeper than the phone. Because this disease doesn't respect the edges of the screen. It leaks into every room you enter. It leaked into mine. I performed for everyone. Not just women. Everyone. I'd sit with other men, friends, colleagues, men whose approval had zero romantic stakes, and I could not stop auditioning. Cracking jokes, always cracking jokes, and feeling that little awkward thud when one landed wrong, then immediately loading the next one, like a comic dying on stage who can't walk off. Managing my impression in real time, scanning faces for the laugh, the nod, the sign that I was still welcome. And underneath every joke, one belief, running silently like a rootkit. If I am just myself, quiet, ordinary, unperforming, I will be boring. And boring means invisible. And invisible means gone. Here's the flip that took me years, and it's the most valuable thing in this chapter. The performance was the boring thing. Read that again. I had it perfectly backwards. What people recoil from is not a man being ordinary. Ordinary is fine. Half of charm is a man being ordinary in a relaxed way. What people recoil from instantly, unconsciously, every single time, is strain, neediness, the smell of an audition. When you crack a joke to be liked, the joke arrives carrying the need, and the need is what lands. That's why those jokes felt awkward. Not because they weren't funny, but because everyone in the room could feel what they were for. A joke told for approval is a bag wearing a clown nose, and it's first cousin to the neg I sent that girl. Both of them are performances aimed at extracting a reaction I needed, and both of them stank of it. Meanwhile, the funniest, most magnetic men you know are not working. Their humor is overflow, not extraction. It spills out of a man at ease, and it lands because nothing rides on it. Charisma is not a skill you add. It's a strain you remove. The only universally repellent trait, the one thing that reads as unattractive in every culture, every context, on every platform, is neediness, not shortness, not baldness, not an ordinary job, not a quiet manner, need. And the cruelest part of the whole machine is that the wound generates the need drives the performance, and the performance broadcasts the need to exactly the people you're trying to impress. The gauge you built to win approval is the very thing losing it. That was my life. A man running a 15-year marketing campaign for a product he privately believed was worthless, and wondering why nobody was buying what the marketer himself wouldn't buy. So here's what this chapter asks of you, and it's the foundation everything else in this book gets built on. Stop treating texting as the problem. The phone is the thermometer, not the fever. We are absolutely going to fix your texting. The grammar, the platforms, the craft. That's most of this book. And it matters, because bad craft can bury even a healthy man. But craft practiced by a wounded man is a gun in a shaking hand. So we fix both machines. The reps in the rebuild chapter will train your thumbs and your identity, including a drill that terrified me the first time I tried it. Deliberately being normal in a conversation. No jokes, no performance, just present. And discovering, rep by rep, the thing I'd never once tested in 15 years, nobody left the room. And carry this reframe with you into the next chapters, because you'll need it. A scene is data, not a verdict. It is one auction, one afternoon, one bid declined by one distracted stranger. You'll see the auction floor for yourself in Chapter 4, and once you see it, you'll understand her silence was almost never about you at all. Your gauge will still fire. It's ancient and it doesn't read books. But there's a difference between an alarm going off and a building actually burning, and learning to tell those apart is the beginning of the whole cure. First, though, we go back to the phone, and to the question I teased you with, if she's not reading your words, what exactly is she reading? Because the answer is stranger than you think, and it explains every dead thread in your graveyard. Chapter 3. She's not reading your words. Let me run an experiment on you. Same message, 5 words. Come over, I'm bored. Now watch what happens when I change nothing but the sender. From the man she's attracted to, the one whose stories she watches twice, those 5 words hit her like a flare in the dark. Her stomach drops. She's already thinking about what to wear. Now the same 5 words from the polite guy who's been orbiting her DMs for 2 months. Instant cringe. Maybe a screenshot to the group chat. Same words. Same grammar. Same hour of the night. Opposite explosions. So I'll ask the question that ended my search for the magic message. If identical words produce opposite results, how much of the result was ever in the words? And the answer, the real load-bearing answer, is almost none of it. The message is not a container of meaning. It's a screen she projects meaning onto, and the projector is her existing picture of you. Communication researchers have a name for part of this. In the 80s, Richard Daft and Robert Langle ranked communication channels by richness, how much signal they carry. Face-to-face is the richest thing there is. Tone, timing, eyes, posture, smell, the microsecond hesitations, everything your nervous system evolved to read. And text? Text is the poorest channel human beings have ever conducted courtship through. Poorer than a phone call, poorer than a letter. A letter at least carries handwriting. You may have heard the famous claim that only 7% of communication is words. That number is a mangled misquote of Albert Mehrabian's research, and he'd be the first to say so. His studies were about feelings and attitudes, narrow stuff. But the kernel under the pop science is solid. When humans judge how another human feels about them, words carry a sliver, and everything else carries the freight. Text amputates the everything else. It strips tone, face, timing, body, the whole orchestra, and delivers the sheet music alone, in a monotone, to be performed in her head. And here's the part nobody tells you. Performed in whose voice? Hers, or rather, the voice she has already assigned you. When your message lands, her brain doesn't hear it neutrally, because brains never do anything neutrally. It renders your text in the voice of her current file on you. And she has a file, brother. Everyone you've ever messaged has a file on you. It's built from your profile, your photos, your mutuals, how you entered her world, who followed whom first, every previous message, your response times, the whole metadata trail compressed into something like a price tag, an assigned value. And that price tag is the single biggest thing determining how your next message reads. High price tag, and your dry 2-word reply comes across confident, busy, intriguing. She fills the empty space generously, the way a fan reads a celebrity's blandest tweet as wit. Low price tag, and your genuinely funny line arrives dead on the slab. She reads it suspiciously, flatly, in the voice of a man she's already filed under no. Text is a Rorschach test, and she describes the ink blot using the file. That's why the whole magic message industry is selling you a lie. There is no sentence so well crafted it can outrun the sender's price tag. I know because I workshopped sentences for years, polished them, A/B tested them like a one-man marketing department, while the file on me said needy, and the file won every time. Texting is a mirror, not a lever. It reveals value with terrifying efficiency, but it cannot manufacture value that isn't there. Write that on your wall. Every guru, promising that the right opener creates attraction, is selling you a lever that isn't attached to anything. Now, Before you throw your phone in a river, the mirror cuts both ways, and this is where it gets useful. Texting can't create value, but it can absolutely destroy it, and it can also confirm it. The price tag isn't carved in stone, it's pencil, and she's constantly revising. Value moves slow going up and fast coming down. A man she priced high can text his way down to zero in one evening. One needy spiral, one wall of paragraphs, one be respectful, and the file gets rewritten in permanent ink. That was my signature move. Enter with a decent price tag. Remember, she followed me first, and then, message by message, mark myself down like expiring meat. Meanwhile, a man she's priced high mostly needs his texts to not contradict the file. That's the real reason attractive men seem to text so effortlessly. Their texts aren't better than yours. Their texts are doing an easier job. So if she's not reading the words, what is she reading? She's reading the shape of the conversation. The metadata, and I want you to really get this because it's the mechanical heart of the entire book. Every message you send is actually two messages. There's the text, the joke, the question, whatever your thumbs typed. And there's the transmission, everything wrapped around the text, how fast you replied, how long your message is compared to hers, who initiated, who asks the questions, who's working, visibly working, and who's lounging, whether silence makes you type more. One glance at a conversation shape on a screen, your blue wall of effort against her gray monosyllables, and any woman alive can tell you who's the buyer and who's the seller without reading a single word. The shape is the status diagram. You've been obsessing over the text while she's been reading the transmission, and the transmission has been telling on you the whole time. Why does she trust the transmission over the text? Evolution again. And here's where the science gets beautiful. Biologists who study animal communication, following a researcher named Amat Zahavi, split signals into cheap and costly. A cheap signal is one anyone can fake. Any peacock can screech, so screeching means nothing. A costly signal can't be faked, because faking it would bankrupt the faker. Only a genuinely fit peacock can afford the ridiculous tale. Now apply that to your phone. Words are the cheapest signal in the known universe. You're so beautiful costs nothing, which is exactly why it's worth nothing. Any of the 40 men in her inbox can type it, so it carries no information about which man typed it. But the metadata is expensive. A man who replies 4 hours later because he was actually training, actually working, actually living, that latency is receipts. A man whose messages are short because his attention genuinely has somewhere better to be, that brevity is receipts. She reads behavior over words for the same reason a bank reads your statement over your promises. One of them can be typed by anybody. One warning before we move on, because I can hear a certain kind of student sharpening his pencil. The lesson here is not fake the metadata. Sit there timing your responses with a stopwatch, performing busyness you don't have, and you've just built a new costume. And costumes leak. Always. Everywhere. The aloof act, sent at 11 p.m., within 40 seconds of her reply, is its own confession. The transmission layer includes its own consistency, and inconsistency reads as exactly what it is. The lesson is, the transmission can only be permanently fixed at the source. Become a man whose time is genuinely contested, and the latency takes care of itself. The mirror can't be argued with, but the thing standing in front of it can change. Here's your homework, and it costs nothing. Open your last 3 dead threads and don't read the words. Squint. Look only at the shape, the lengths, the colors, the rhythm, who chased whom down the page. Somewhere around the 3rd thread your stomach will drop because you'll see what she saw. Good. That's the mirror doing its job for you, for once. Now, I've been saying she reads your messages through a file, in the middle of her own crowded, glowing, chaotic world. It's time you actually saw that world, because you've been texting into a room you've never once stood in. Next chapter, we walk the auction floor. Chapter 4. The Auction You Never Saw. Every man texts a woman from inside a private delusion, and the delusion is this. He imagines his message arriving the way a letter arrives in a quiet house. She hears the knock. She walks to the door. She reads his words in a silent room, considers them on their merits, and composes her response. Brother, I need to demolish that house, because nothing you write will make sense until you see where your messages actually land. Your message does not arrive in a quiet house. It arrives on an auction floor. Let me give you the numbers, because the numbers are not close. In 2016, a researcher named Gareth Tyson and his colleagues ran a study on Tinder that should be read at every boy's 13th birthday. They set up fake profiles and measured behavior. Men swiping said yes to roughly 60% of women. Women said yes to around 4 to 5% of men. Sit with the asymmetry. The average man is fishing with a wide net in an empty ocean. The average woman is standing in a river so thick with fish they're jumping into the boat. The result? Men's matches trickle, women's matches flood. And the apps are just the measurable corner of a game that runs everywhere now. Christian Rudder, who co-founded OkCupid and had the rare decency to publish his data, found that women collectively rated 80% of men as below average in attractiveness. Not the bottom half. The bottom 80. The male curve rated by women is a cliff. However mid you think the competition is, her ratings disagree, and her inbox agrees with her ratings. Because here's what her side of the glass looks like, and I mean an ordinary pretty girl, not a celebrity, not an influencer, just a 20-something woman with good photos in a mid-sized city. She posts a story and 40 men respond, and she will answer 3 of them and 2 of those out of boredom while a show buffers. Her message requests are a landfill of, "Hey, hi dear, you're gorgeous." Identical bids from men she'll never open, each one written by a man in a quiet room who spent real thought on it, each one landing as one more indistinguishable pellet in an endless gray hail. Your masterpiece opener isn't competing against silence. It's competing against a wall of noise at a venue where the doorman is her thumb and the review takes half a second. Now put your economist hat on, because 2 forces on that floor explain almost every dead thread you own. Force 1. Choice overload. Psychologists Sheena Iyengar and Mark Lepper once ran a famous experiment with jam. Offer shoppers 6 jams, and they browse and buy. Offer 24, and they freeze, and buy nothing. Choice past a certain point stops empowering and starts numbing. The psychologist Barry Schwartz built a whole career mapping how abundance breeds paralysis, indifference, and buyer's remorse. Her inbox is the 24 jam table, times 10, refilling in real time every single day of her adult life. What does that do to a person? It makes deletion the default. It makes attention the exception, an act of effort. It means she isn't rejecting you the way you imagine rejection, a considered no after review. Most of the time she's not considering you at all, the way you don't consider each individual email in your spam folder. And it means the currency on this floor is not adequacy. Adequate is invisible. The only bid that survives the auction is different. Different in a way that lands in half a second, which, before you ask, is exactly what the grammar chapters are for. Force 2, and this one's deeper. The price of a mistake is not the same on her side of the glass. Evolutionary psychologists Marty Haselton and David Buss call it error management. Nature tunes our judgment not for accuracy, but for cheap mistakes. You flinch at a stick that looks like a snake, because flinching at sticks is cheap and petting snakes is not. Now run mating through that machine. For your male ancestors, the costly error was missing a real opportunity, so men are tuned toward optimism. He reads her politeness as interest every time, as you may have noticed from inside your own skull. For your female ancestors, a false yes, the wrong man, the deceptive man, the dangerous man, could cost everything, while a false no cost almost nothing, because the river was always full of fish. So her filter is tuned in one direction. When in doubt, no ambiguity defaults to deletion. That clever, risky, could be read two ways message you sent? On the auction floor, the ambiguous read is the cheap read. And the cheap read is no. She is not being cruel when she does this. She's running ancient software on a modern venue, the same way you're running ancient software every time your chest burns over a scene. And now let's take the halo off, because clear eyes means the whole picture, and some of what happens on that floor is a game being run on you. That follow that started everything. A woman following you first? I once read that as a love letter. It is not a love letter. Sometimes it's curiosity. Sometimes it's the algorithm. Sometimes it's boredom on a Tuesday. And sometimes it's inventory management. Understand something about the attention economy. For a woman wired into it, male attention is a resource. It's mood fuel. It's insurance. It's a metric with a number on it. And some women farm it, deliberately and skillfully. The story posted at peak hours to Harvest 40 replies she will never answer. That's not communication, that's a crop. The orbiters kept on low simmer with a like every few weeks, a 2-word reply every 10 days. Never enough to date, exactly enough to keep the attention flowing. That's not indecision, that's infrastructure. The breadcrumbs, the maybes, the we should hang out, sometimes stretched over months. For some women, that's the whole game. And men like the man I was are the crop being farmed, donating years of attention to women who decided in the first week that the answer was no, and just never filed the paperwork. It's real, it's common, and pretending otherwise is how nice guys stay nice guys. But mark the line, because this is where I differ from the bitter corners of the internet. Seeing the game clearly is power. Hating the players is poison. She didn't design the auction. Evolution built the floor, and Instagram built the walls, and the app is farming her exactly as it farms you, selling her validation the way it sells you hope, and taking its cut from both. The black pill preachers see this same floor and tell you to lie down on it and rot. I'm telling you the opposite. See it clearly, refuse to be crop, and learn to walk the floor like a man who knows where he is. Because here's the strategic payoff of everything in this chapter. The one sentence that reorganized my entire approach. In an auction, the bidder who needs to win has already lost. The 40 men in her inbox are bidding louder, sweeter, more desperate, refreshing the page. The bids all read the same because they are the same. Please pick me. There is exactly one position of power on an auction floor, and it is not head bidder. It's being the lot, the thing bid on. The man whose attention is the scarce commodity in the room, who arrives with his own full life, bids once, lightly, like a man flicking a card onto a table, and visibly does not care whether the gavel falls his way, because his day was already good, and his week is already spoken for. That flip, from bidder to lot, from applicant to prize, is the entire rest of this book. But you can't fake your way into it with tactics, because, say it with me now, the transmission leaks. You get there by fixing the man and then learning the moves, in that order. So let's start the autopsies. 2 corpses on the table, both of them mine. First up, the nice text, the interview, the essay, the good morning service, and the exact mechanics of why polite men die politely. Bring a strong stomach, brother. You're going to recognize the body. Chapter 5. Death by Niece, the interviewer. There's a specific way polite men die in the DMs, and it's so quiet that most of them never even know they're dead. No fight, no insult, no dramatic block. The thread just cools, like a cup of tea nobody's drinking. And 3 weeks later he's typing, "Hey stranger," into the void. This chapter is the autopsy of that death. I'm going to lay out the nice guy's entire repertoire, move by move, and show you what each one actually transmits on the other side of the glass. And I'm qualified to conduct this autopsy for the worst possible reason. Every corpse on this table is wearing my clothes. Exhibit 1. The interview. Where are you from? Study or work? How was your day? What do you do for fun? On paper, it looks like interest, and that's what I believed I was transmitting. Honest interest, the respectful kind. Now read it from her side. Question, answer, question, answer. Every question is a small invoice. Here, stranger, do some work for me. Stack 5 in a row, and you haven't made a conversation. You've made a shift. She's clocked in, answering forms for a man she never applied to. There's no game in it, no flirt, no spark of risk, nothing to react to. And 1 layer down, it's worse, because the interview quietly announces your position. You're auditioning her attention, gathering data like an applicant researching the company. The interviewer is a bidder. Remember the auction, and he's bidding with paperwork. Meanwhile, the transmission reads, "This man has nothing to offer but questions, and an evening with him will feel exactly like this thread." That last part is the killer, and underline it. She reads every conversation as a free sample of what dating you would feel like. The interview samples as work. Exhibit 2, the essay. Her, LOL. You, 4 sentences. Her, haha yeah. You, a paragraph with commas, context, a follow-up question, and God forgive me I did this. A little joke you revised twice before sending. Squint at that thread the way I taught you. One side is a wall of effortful blue, the other is gray gravel. You don't need to read 1 word to know everything. The shape is a diagram of who's chasing, and here's the mechanism under it. Investment signals value. Not her value, yours. In every human exchange, the party working harder is confessing which party matters more, and a screen renders that confession visually, in real time, in colored blocks. Willard Waller, a sociologist, put a name on the law underneath this all the way back in 1938, the principle of least interest, and in a relationship, the person who cares less holds the power, and the person who cares more pays for it. Your essay is a care more receipt, printed and signed, and the tragedy is the effort itself. You thought effort was the currency that buys her. In courtship's early game, visible effort doesn't buy, it discounts, the seller marking his own price down. Exhibit 3, the instant reply. Her message lands, and your reply is airborne within 40 seconds, at any hour, on any day, forever. I told myself this was decency. Games are for children. I'm simply responsive. Here's what it transmits. This man's glass is always in his hand, and nothing in his life outranks me. A stranger. 0 scarcity. And scarcity, as Robert Cialdini spent a career documenting, is welded to perceived value in the human mind. We want what's contested and discount what's abundant, automatically, even when we know the trick is being played. A man whose attention arrives instantly in unlimited quantities at all hours has set its market price himself, free. She doesn't even have to think this consciously. The latency does the pricing for her. And before your inner economist starts drafting rules, no, the cure is not fake delays, and we'll get there. The cure is a life in which instant replies are actually impossible. Different thing entirely. Exhibit 4, the compliment shower. You're so beautiful, prettiest girl I've seen. That smile, though. I want to be surgical here, because men think this fails politely, that it's merely ignored. It fails worse than that. Recall the costly signal principle. A signal only carries information if it costs something. A compliment on her beauty from a stranger costs nothing, and is supplied by every one of the 40 men in her requests folder, in nearly identical words. So it transmits no information about you except one thing, that you're in the 40. It self-classifies you into the gray hail, and beneath that, a subtler poison, unearned compliments announce your own price. Praise flowing uphill from someone who's received nothing is tribute, and tribute is what subjects pay. She hears the transmission perfectly. This man believes he must pay to enter. Men who believe they must pay, she reasons correctly, are men who suspect they're not worth free admission. Exhibit 5, the agreement machine. Whatever she says, haha, yeah, so true, same honestly, no, you're right. I ran this program for years, and here's its secret source code, terror of friction. Agree with everything, and there's nothing to reject. That was the theory. But no friction means no texture, no edges, no you. She's talking to a mirror with a data plan, and the sample it offers, remember, every thread is a sample, is an evening with a man who has no opinions she can push against. Attraction, brother, needs something to press on. Polarity requires 2 poles. The agreement machine is boring not because it's polite, but because it's empty. And the emptiness is the strategy, the same one from Chapter 2. A man hiding his normal self because he's certain the real thing won't be enough. She can't see your soul through the glass, but she can absolutely see the hiding. And Exhibit 6. The protest kit. This is the nice guy's endgame, deployed when all the service stops working. When the thread cools despite the good morning texts, when the scene sits there unanswered. Out comes the question mark, alone on its own line. The double text. The triple, hello. Guess you're busy, lol. Did I say something wrong? And the crown jewel, my crown jewel, the lecture. Be respectful. Attachment researchers, following John Bowlby's work, have a name for this exact behavioral suite. Protest behavior. The escalating signals a distressed attachment system fires at a figure who's withdrawing. It's the psychology of a toddler pounding a door, and I mean that with compassion, because the toddler and the texting man are running the same circuit. The ancient alarm from Chapter 2, screaming, "Don't leave," converted by thumbs into pixels. Every protest message transmits one thing, at maximum volume. Your silence owns me. It is the final markdown, the one after which the file on you gets closed for good. Now step back from the 6 exhibits and see the single organism, because these aren't 6 mistakes. They're 6 symptoms of one covert contract. The nice guy's texting is a deal he never says out loud. I will be endlessly available, agreeable, complimentary, and patient, and in exchange, you will owe me your interest. That's why the anger arrives when the thread dies. That's how a man who signed off "be respectful" can spend 15 years believing he was the polite one. Service was rendered. The invoice went unpaid. The lecture is a collections call. But she never signed your contract, brother. She never even knew the terms. Kindness with a hidden invoice isn't kindness. It's a bid in the auction from the neediest bidder on the floor, and everything in her evolution, the inbox math, error management, plain human taste, is built to route around it. So hear the verdict of this autopsy precisely, because sloppy readings of it produce monsters, and I'll be dissecting one of those next. You are not punished for being kind. Kindness, real kindness, the kind with no invoice attached, is high-status behavior. Secure men are famously generous, because generosity from a full man costs him nothing and signals everything. You were punished for being needy while calling it kindness. She never rejected the courtesy. She rejected the contract underneath it. I learned half of that lesson at 2 a.m. with a credit card in my hand. I understood the nice guy was dead and concluded, with a convert's zeal, that the cure must be his opposite. So, I bought the knife. Next chapter, I put my second corpse on the table. The copied tease, the borrowed swagger, the neg that detonated in my own hand, and show you why the jerk costume fails for the exact same reason the nice costume did. Chapter 6. The Borrowed Knife. Before I dissect the second corpse, I want to explain how the knife got into my hand, because the supply chain matters. Nobody is born negging strangers about their grades. That behavior is manufactured, packaged, and sold, and the industry that sold it to me is worth a hard look before we look at the wound. Here's the business model of the texting guru, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. What actually makes Banterland, you'll see it in a moment, is calibration, a live situational judgment that reads this woman, this moment, this thread. And calibration cannot be put in a PDF. It can't be downloaded. It can only be trained, slowly through reps like a golf swing. But you can't sell reps at 2 a.m. to a desperate man. You can sell lines. Lines are packageable, screenshotable, refundable. So the industry sells the only inventory it can ship, scripts to the customers least equipped to use them. Wounded men with no calibration, buying words that worked once for somebody else. It's a market that structurally must sell the wrong thing. I wasn't a customer, brother. I was the product's ideal failure case, prepaid. And the flagship product, the one I bought, was the neg. A little history, because context is everything with this weapon. The neg came out of the pickup underground of the 2000s, invented for a highly specific battlefield, loud nightclubs, and a highly specific target. Women of overwhelming professional-grade beauty, armored in a wall of worship, numb to compliments because they'd heard 40 that night. In that one niche, a playful backhanded remark was a pattern break, the only man in the room not kneeling. Whatever you think of that scene, the tool at least matched its context. Then the internet got hold of it, sanded off every warning label, and mailed it to millions of ordinary lonely men who proceeded to fire it at ordinary women in ordinary DMs. Women who weren't drowning in worship, weren't armored, and had simply mentioned their major. A tool built for one lock, jammed into every door in the neighborhood, by men who'd never been taught what a lock is. Now the science of why it detonated, and this is my favorite piece of science in the whole book. Evolutionary psychologist Jeffrey Miller has argued something profound about why humans flirt the way we do. Courtship banter is a fitness display. The rapid wit, the teasing, the improvised wordplay. It functions like the peacock's tail, but for the brain. A live, unfakeable demonstration of processing speed, social intelligence, confidence under fire. Read that again. Live and unfakeable. That's the entire value of banter as a signal. It's expensive. It can't be outsourced. It proves the machine works right now. So what is a memorized line? A plagiarized exam answer. Walked into an oral examination. It might survive one exchange. But banter is a conversation, not a flashcard. The examiner asks follow-ups. The moment she responds off script, the plagiarist has to generate the next move himself, live. With the machine, the script was hiding. And the crash isn't neutral. It's worse than never having flexed. You've now demonstrated a fake fitness display, which signals both low fitness and fraud. One question deep, brother. That's how far my swagger survived. You watched it happen. Tease. Her playful return. And then a girl gave me an answer that wasn't in the PDF, and the next page of the script shot her in the face. Because here, precisely here, is the difference between a tease and an insult, and I'm going to give it to you as a formula since nobody ever gave it to me. A tease punches sideways, at the surface, with a wink built in. Sideways, at something she chose, her coffee order, her terrible taste in films, her being too cool for her nerdy major. Surface, never at the load-bearing walls, not her body, not her intelligence, not her worth, not anything she just trusted you with. And the wink. An unmistakable undertone of, I see you, and I like what I see, which is what makes teasing a compliment wearing a disguise. The tension between the playful jab and the obvious warmth is the fun. That's why you don't look like the CS type briefly worked, even fired by a fraud like me. By dumb luck, it was structurally correct. Sideways, surface, secretly flattering. Now the insult. It punches down. At something real, with need in its pocket. When she dropped the banter and handed me a true thing, her actual grades, good ones, a first molecule of trust, the calibrated move was obvious. Honor the disclosure. Then play elsewhere. The script punched the disclosure. That's it. That's the whole quiet horror of it. A tease aimed at trust converts instantly into an attack. And no delivery, no emoji, no swagger can convert it back. And when it blew up, her response, "Are you Einstein?" was, "I told you, a lifeline." Let me now give that lifeline its proper name, because you're going to meet it constantly out there. That was a test. Women test constantly, reflexively, and mostly unconsciously, and they are right to. Because on an auction floor swarming with counterfeit confidence, testing is quality control. Poke the frame, see if it's load-bearing. Push the cocky man. Find out if there's a man behind the cocky. Her attack wasn't a door slamming. It was a hand checking whether the wall was drywall or brick. Every response to a test sorts into 3 bins. Crumble. Apologize. Backpedal. Explain. Sorry. I was just joking. Didn't mean it. Test failed. Drywall confirmed. Counterattack. Escalate. Get defensive. Lecture. Test failed catastrophically. Drywall and a wound behind it. Or play, absorb it with amusement, and send it back lighter. Einstein? I barely survived college. I just like the sparks when you're worked up. Self-deprecation from altitude, brother. Laughing at yourself without shrinking is the single most disarming transmission in the game, because only a man who isn't defending anything can afford it. It's a costly signal of security. I chose door number 2, a one-word deflection cowering behind a laughing emoji, and then, 27 minutes later, the lecture. Drywall. Wound. File closed. Which brings us to the deepest law in this chapter, the one that unifies both corpses on my table. Tactics inherit the wound of the man using them. The transmission layer from Chapter 3 doesn't switch off when you switch costumes. It broadcasts through the neg exactly as it broadcasts through the good morning text. A tease executed by a man who needs it to land arrives as what it is, supplication in a leather jacket. The push-pull run by a man terrified of the pull reads as flinching. She doesn't decode this consciously. She just feels the strain. The same strain, brother, from Chapter 2. The exact same audition smell as my awkward jokes with men, now wearing spikes. The nice guy begs with sugar. The script guy begs with pepper. And beg reads as beg through any seasoning in under 3 messages every time. The knife was never the problem, and the flowers were never the problem. The shaking hand was the problem. One more thing before we leave the guru's shop, and this one's the wall, stated plainly. Somewhere past the scripts, the industry's darker aisles sell actual manipulation, coached deception, engineered jealousy, feigned indifference as a system, drama by design. Ignore the ethics for a second. I'll kill it on pure engineering. Every one of those plays only works while she never finds out, which makes each one alone against the discovery that always comes, at compound interest, in the group chat, with screenshots. And each one is a confession, to yourself, nightly, that you don't believe the undisguised you can win, which is the exact wound this book exists to close, fed, and watered. Genuinely strong men don't run those plays for the same reason rich men don't shoplift. Everything I teach you from here works in daylight, on the strength of what you actually are, which means the real work is upstream of every message, building the thing behind the phone that makes daylight sufficient. So we're done with corpses. Autopsy's over. Both costumes burned. Starting next chapter, we build, and we start with the invisible spine of every text you'll ever send from now on. The frame, what it is, why yours collapsed every time she went quiet, and how a man texts when his week is already spoken for. Chapter 7. The Frame Behind the Phone. Take 2 men. Same age, same face, same phone. Both of them open Instagram at 9 at night and find a message from the same attractive woman. Hey, what are you up to? The first man's evening reorganizes itself around the notification, like iron filings around a magnet. He was doing nothing. He's been doing nothing since dinner, cycling between 4 apps, and now the nothing has a purpose. He answers in 90 seconds, then holds the phone through the silence that follows, television on, seeing none of it. The second man is mid-set in his garage gym, or deep in the project that's going to change his next 5 years, or out with men he's known for a decade. The phone buzzes in a jacket. He finds the message an hour and a half later, smiles, sends back one amused line, and returns to his life the way a stone returns to the bottom of a river. Same woman, same message, same thumbs even. But the 2 replies that come back are transmitting from different planets. And here's the thing that should haunt you. She can tell. Through the glass, through the emoji, through every trick of wording, she can tell. What she's detecting is the frame, the invisible posture behind the words, the answer to the only question that matters under every conversation. Which of us needs this more? The first man's frame says, "You are the event." The second man's frame says, "You are a pleasant part of a day that was already full." And chapter after chapter, science and story, we've established what that difference does to your price on the auction floor. Waller's principle of least interest isn't a tactic. It's a reading. She reads, "Who cares less?" and caring less governs. What I want to burn into you now is where that reading actually comes from. Because getting this wrong cost me years. The frame is not in the text. The frame is in the man, and the text merely leaks it. This is why every attempt to fake it collapses. And I ran the full program of fakery, so let me save you the tuition. I did the timed replies. She takes an hour. You take 90 minutes, like a hostage negotiator with a spreadsheet. I did the perform busyness. Crazy day, slammed right now, sent from a couch into a day of nothing. I did aloof guy punctuation, the strategic period, the withheld emoji. And every scheme collapsed the same way. Inconsistency. The transmission layer includes its own audit trail, brother. The aloof act sent at 11:40 at night, 40 seconds after her message, is self-refuting. The metadata testifies against the costume. She may never articulate it, but she feels the wrongness, the way you can feel a laugh track. Fake scarcity is a counterfeit bill, and this economy has excellent counterfeit detection. Time. Anyone can act busy for an evening. Nobody can act busy for 3 weeks. So the only latency strategy that survives contact is the embarrassing, unfashionable one, an actual life. This is where this book joins hands with everything I've said before about mission, because a man in the middle of a real mission doesn't practice looking occupied. He is occupied, and the metadata simply reports it. His replies are short because his attention is genuinely expensive. His hours-long silences aren't tactics, they're Tuesdays. There's a phrase I want you to carry. The phone is small in a big life. When texting her is the main event of your day, she can feel it through the glass. I don't care how well you write. When texting her is a pleasant sideshow to a day that was already won by noon, she can feel that too, and that feeling has a name on her side. Intrigue. You cannot write intrigue. You can only live a day that produces it as exhaust. Now let's get tactical inside that truth, because frame does have mechanics. Postures the secure man holds that the needy man breaks, and you can start holding them today as training wheels while the life gets built. Posture 1. You end conversations. Sometimes. First, on the high note. The needy man milks every thread to exhaustion, keeps the plate spinning until she stops responding, which means every conversation he's ever had ended with her walking away from it. Flip the record. When the thread peaks, a laugh, a good exchange, that's exactly when you're gone. All right, I've got a thing. Don't miss me too much. What that transmits? His attention has edges. Access closes. Cialdini told you what closing access does to value. And there's a bonus mechanism, an old finding from psychologist Bluma Zygarnik. Unfinished business hooks the mind harder than finished business. The interrupted task is the one you can't stop rehearsing. A conversation that ends at its peak keeps playing in her head. A conversation milked to death gets buried there. Posture 2. You never explain your silences. Study the apology reflex. Sorry for the late reply. Phone died. Crazy day. Every unprompted explanation is a small kneel. It accepts the premise that she's owed your latency, that a clock was running, that you were on it. The secure man doesn't reference the gap at all. He just resumes, warm and unbothered, mid-world, back from the mountains. What'd you break while I was gone? No apology, no accounting. If she teases, oh, look who remembered I exist. That's a test. And now you know the bins. Play, never crumble. I ration my appearances. Scarcity keeps you interested. Posture 3. The investment mirror. Rough guide, not religion. Match her energy, or run slightly under it. Her 2 lines earn 1 to 2 of yours. Her essay earns a warm paragraph, never a longer one. Her 1-word reply earns either a single amused line or silence, and silence is frequently the stronger move. What this maintains is the shape. Remember, She reads the shape before the words, and the shape must never show you working uphill. But hear the disclaimer twice. This is a posture, not arithmetic. A man counting characters is a man outsourcing his frame to a calculator, and the strain of the counting will leak too. The mirror is what your texting looks like when you genuinely aren't chasing. Count only until it's natural, then burn the abacus. Posture 4, and this one is the frame's foundation, the bedrock under the other three. Silence never moves you. Her silence, this time. The scene that sits there. The reply that doesn't come by 10, by midnight, by Thursday. The needy man's frame shatters at exactly this pressure point. Silence is the test he cannot pass, the one that produced my two famous words. The framed man's rule is absolute. Silence is never answered with pursuit. Not with a question mark, not with a witty bump, not with a lecture. She went quiet. The ball is in her half. The game either resumes from her side, or it doesn't, and either way his evening was already spoken for. I'll give this discipline its own full chapter soon, because the scene deserves its own chapter. But the frame version is one line. The man whose day cannot be switched off by a stranger's thumb is the man whose frame cannot be broken by one either. And there it is again, the loop this book keeps closing. Every posture routes back to chapter 2. Why can't he hold the exit? Why does he explain his silences, overinvest, chase the scene, the wound, the gauge wired to her reply? Frame collapses at the exact coordinates where identity was outsourced, which is why frame repair and identity repair are the same construction project, and why the rebuild program at the end of this book trains both with the same reps. A man cannot hold a posture his self-worth is actively betraying. But, and here's the mercy in the mechanism, the causality runs both ways. Every time you hold the posture under fire, end the thread at its peak, leave the silence unchased, let the explanation die untyped. You cast a vote for the man you're becoming, and the gauge hears it. Act from the frame, and the frame grows bone. So that's the spine, but a spine isn't a conversation. Within the frame, there's still craft. What to actually type, how to open, how to tease without the knife, how to build the thing she feels when she sees your name light up and smiles before she's read a word. Next chapter is the one you probably bought this book for, brother. The Grammar of Attraction. Now that you can carry it without shaking, let's put something in your hand. Chapter 8. The Grammar of Attraction. Everything until now has been the man behind the phone. This chapter is the thumbs. And before I hand you a single technique, I'm posting the warning that separates this chapter from the PDF I bought at 2 in the morning. What follows is grammar, not sentences. I'm going to show you the structures with live examples, before and after. But the examples are teaching shapes, not scripts to deploy. Memorize the shape. Generate your own words, always. You already watched what happens to a man carrying someone else's sentences into a live exam. Rule 1, the master rule, statements over questions. The interviewer died by questions, so study the alternative. She says she's studying computer science. The question man says, "Oh, nice, do you like it?" A form to fill out. The statement man says, "So you're the final boss of the library." That's an assumption, playful, slightly wrong on purpose, and it transforms her next move. A question demands labor. A statement invites reaction. She can confirm it, deny it, push back, escalate the joke. Suddenly she has room to play, and if she plays, she's investing by choice, which is the only investment that counts. Watch the difference in what comes back. Forms return facts. Statements return energy. Your working ratio while you retrain. 3 statements for every question, minimum. When you must ask something, dress it in an opinion first. Not where are you from? You give off coastal energy. I'm rarely wrong about this. Now she's laughing and correcting you, which means she's answering the question and chasing your frame at the same time. Rule 2. Brevity is status. Every message you write, cut in half. Then look hard at it and cut again. The short message transmits from higher ground. It says my attention is expensive and I'm not working for this, while length screams effort, and you know by now what visible effort does to price. There's craft in compression. Wit tightens, explanation dilutes. That's why her LOL plus your paragraph is a death diagram, and why the strongest reply to many messages is 5 words with a smirk built in. Hard ceiling while you train. 4 lines, never more. If it can't fit in 4 lines, it's a phone call or it's nothing. Rule 3. Tension over comfort. Here's the deepest miscalibration in the nice man's texting. He optimizes for smoothness, agreement, support, haha yeah, because smooth feels safe. But attraction is not smooth. Attraction is charge, and charge requires 2 poles held apart. Tease, challenge, playful friction, the unexpected angle. These create the gap the spark jumps across. Comfort is dessert, served later, in person, once attraction exists. Served first, over text, it reads as the podcast. Pleasant, consumed idly, forgotten mid-episode. So when she says I'm actually the chillest, the agreement machine says, haha, I can tell, smooth, dead. The charged reply holds the pole. That's exactly what a stressed person would say. Friction, brother. 1 notch of it, wrapped in play. She has to push back, and pushing back is the game beginning. Rule 4. The tease, executed correctly this time. You have the formula from the autopsy. Sideways, surface, wink. So here's the constructive version in action. Tease her choices, never her worth. The coffee order with a paragraph of customizations, the aggressively niche music taste, her being suspiciously good at something useless. Tease upward or level, never down. Tease the beauty queen about being a nerd. Tease the nerd about being secretly cool, never the reverse. The tease must point at armor, not at skin. And keep the warmth audible. The undertone of every good tease is, I've been paying attention and I like what I found, which is why a good tease lands as a compliment that had to be earned by decoding. If you're ever unsure which side of the line you're on, run the wound check. Could this touch something she's actually insecure about? Then it's not a tease. Delete it. When one misfires anyway, it happens to calibrated men too. The recovery is Chapter 6 altitude. Easy. I'm teasing. You're clearly the brains here. Own it lightly. Never grovel twice. Rule 5. The callback. This one separates the men who text from the men who connect. Every conversation generates material. Her chaotic parking. The goat story you promised. The nickname that landed. The average man lets it evaporate. The skilled man banks it and pays it back later with interest. 3 days after the parking story, saw a car parked across 2 spots today. Thought of you immediately. What the callback transmits is gold on every layer. I was listening. We have history. There's an us with inside jokes only 2 people hold shares in. It converts a thread of messages into the feeling of a running story. And the running story is what she's actually swiping for. Rule 6. The open loop. Bluma Zygarnik again. The unfinished task cooks the mind, so stop finishing everything. Remind me to tell you about the goat incident. Then, don't tell her. Not that night. Maybe not for days. Not until she's demanded it twice. I saw something today that's either a red flag or the coolest thing about you. Undecided. The loop plants an itch that your name now owns. Every hour it stays open, you're renting space in her head at zero cost. Close loops slowly. Open new ones faster than you close them, and never, never burn a loop to fill a silence. Loops are for peaks. Rule 7. Qualification. Flipping the courtroom. The whole nice guy tragedy is that he's permanently on trial, auditioning. The qualified man swaps the chairs. She says she's from up north. Huh. You get one shot to convince me Northerners are actually fun. She lists a hobby. Okay, but are you weekend hobby into it, or actually into it? There's a difference, and I judge. Delivered with a wink, this does something subtle and enormous. It presumes you have standards, that access to you is gated, that she could fail. And when she plays along, listing, defending, proving, she is investing. An investment manufactures value in the investor's own mind. We defend hardest the things we've paid for. Then, crucially, when she qualifies well, pay it off. Okay, that's actually cool. A measured, specific approval. Approval from a man who rations it lands like sunlight through clouds. Approval from the agreement machine is weather. Rule 8. Punctuation, emoji, and the small tells. The devil lives in the details here. So quickly. 1 emoji maximum per message, and entire messages with none. The emoji per sentence man is laugh-tracking his own jokes. Watch the nervous laughing face, the one I hid behind. It reads as a flinch, because it usually is one. Exclamation marks, rationed to nearly never, periods and unpunctuated cool are your registers. No triple texts. And typos. Fix them rarely and shamelessly. The man who instantly corrects his own message to a stranger is broadcasting how closely he's watching the thread. Rule 9. The voice note, your unfair advantage. Remember the poverty of text from Chapter 3? The channel strips tonality, and tonality is where masculinity actually lives in sound. The voice note restores the orchestra. 20 seconds, brother. Relaxed, low, amused, midlife, maybe wind or a gym in the background, outranks 200 typed words because it's a costly signal no keyboard can counterfeit. This is an actual, unbothered man in an actual life whose voice does this. Deploy it as a pattern break at a peak, answering a fun question, escalating a joke, never as a monologue, never needy, never over 30 seconds. And it screens for you. A woman who answers voice with voice is investing at a level no text thread can fake. Rule 10. Exit on peaks. The grammar's closing law and the frame posture you already know now is pure craft. Every session should end 1 beat before it wants to. The laugh lands. That's the exit. You leave the party while it's loud, brother, every time. And the Zeigarnik itch does your overnight marketing for free. Milk a thread past its peak even once, and you've taught her that your attention is bottomless. End early 3 times in a row and watch. I promise you this specific pleasure. A woman initiate for the first time in your adult life, chasing the ending you keep denying her. That's the grammar. 10 rules, and every one of them a dialect of the same language. I have a full life. I noticed you. I'm not chasing. Come play. But grammar needs a playing field, and the field has changed under our feet. The game today opens on a grid of photos, runs through stories, and lives or dies by a profile she'll study for 9 seconds before deciding whether your message deserves a voice at all. Next chapter, Instagram, the actual arena, and how to stop losing the game before your first word. Chapter 9. Instagram is the game now. The men of my father's generation met women in exactly 3 places: the neighborhood, the workplace, and the wedding of a cousin, and game was 30 seconds of nerve at a bus stop. I still believe in that nerve. Nothing in this chapter replaces a man who can walk up in daylight and say hello with a steady voice. But I'd be lying to you about the modern battlefield if I pretended the game hasn't moved. Today the approach happens on a grid of squares. The number close has become the follow, and the first date is preceded by a forensic audit of your last 2 years of posts. Instagram isn't an app anymore, brother. It's the venue. So this chapter is the venue guide, the physics of the place, and how not to lose the game before your first word. Physics Lesson 1. She visits your profile before she answers your message. Every time. Within seconds of your name lighting up her requests, your grid is on her screen and the file from Chapter 3 is being written. Price tag assigned in about 9 seconds, appeal court rarely granted. Which means your profile is not a scrapbook, it's your opener, sent in advance, to every woman you will ever message. And most men's profiles are begging before their first word arrives. So audit yours tonight with the mirror rules. Your grid should read at a squint, like evidence of a life a high-value man would be living anyway. And that's the key clause. It's evidence, not advertisement. 2 or 3 clear photos of your face, well lit, unfiltered, at least one genuinely smiling, because a profile without a visible face is a locked door. Proof of motion, the sport, the mountain, the project, the stage, the thing you build, mission made visible. Proof of tribe, you among men who clearly rate you. One photo where you're mid-laugh in company. Social proof does quiet, heavy lifting. Humans mate copy. They always have. We trust the judgment of others who've already chosen a man. And the deletions. Tonight, the gym mirror flex spam. 1 is plenty. 6 is a scream. The lone wolf grid of sunsets and cars with no humans in it. The meme-only ghost account, which reads as hiding. And anything thirsty. A comment trail of fire emojis under models, photos is visible to her, and it files you with the 40 before you've typed a word. Physics Lesson 2. Stories are the broadcast channel, and the broadcast runs whether you're aware of it or not. Your grid is your resume. Your stories are your pulse. Proof the life is live. 2 or 3 a week. Same evidence rules. The run, the meal you actually cooked, the boys, the work in progress, the dumb joke that's actually funny. Never. The gym selfie every single day. The lonely night music story. The vague sad boy quote. And here's the venue's best kept secret. The story is also the radar. Watch who watches. A woman who appears in your viewers fast, story after story, who reacts, who replies with the laughing emoji to your nonsense, is announcing herself at a volume. Instagram was specifically designed to let her deny later. The modern game is mostly this. Broadcast a real life, read the radar, and act on the blips with some nerve. Which brings us to the modern approach itself, and I'll rank the doors by strength. The strongest door. She replies to your story. Understand what that is. She had zero obligation. She was holding her phone. Your life crossed her screen, and she chose to open a thread. That's the strongest invitation this venue issues. Don't fumble it with gratitude, brother. No, haha. Thanks for watching Energy Ever. She replied, laughing to your story. You're now sworn to secrecy. What happens in my kitchen stays in my kitchen. Straight into play. Statement grammar. Like she was always in the conversation. Second door. You open through her story. This is the modern cold approach, and it beats the DM from nowhere for one reason: context. A reply to her story arrives attached to something she chose to broadcast. It's a comment on the world, not an ambush on her existence. The grammar rules apply with full force: an observation or a tease. Never a compliment on her face. Never the fire emoji. The fire emoji is the gray hail, brother. It's what all 40 send. She posts the hike. Okay, but this is clearly a rescue mission photo. How lost were you? She posts the latte art, rating the foam a 6. The barista carried you. Sideways, surface, wink. One line, then you're gone. No follow-up if it dies. A story reply is a card flicked on the table, not a bid. And the third door, the famous one, she follows you first. I got handed this door once, and you know what I built on it. So let me reprice it for you with cold eyes. A follow is a door opened, and nothing more. Curiosity, boredom, the algorithm's whim, make copying off a mutual, inventory management by a farmer stocking orbiters. The follow does not distinguish. What the follow gives you is permission to bid once, lightly, and data that the bid won't land in the request's landfill. What it does not give you is a price tag exemption. Her file on you starts assembling the second you open your mouth. Play it exactly like door 2. Warm, contextual, zero gratitude, statement first. And soon, brother, the auction floor moves in hours, not weeks. A follow acted on within a day or two is warm. The same follow 3 weeks later is a cold case. Now the diseases of the venue, because Instagram breeds 2 specifically male diseases, and I've survived both. Disease 1, orbiting. The man who likes every photo, watches every story first, drops the polite comment with the single heart. For months, years, he believes he's staying on her radar. Hear the truth, and I'll say it in the venue's own language. The like everything man has already been classified, and the classification is furniture. His attention arrives with the reliability of a utility bill and gets read with the same excitement. And, worse, his metadata is public. She can see, and does, that his devotion costs him nothing and lands on her precisely always. Digital begging, on a schedule. The discipline is the exact inverse. Engage rarely, memorably, and from strength. One genuinely funny story, reply a month, outranks 300 likes, and a man whose attention arrives unpredictably is the only kind whose attention gets noticed at all. Disease 2, reciprocity accounting. She didn't watch my story, but she watched his. She unliked, she muted, she followed some guy. Brother, the venue hands the wounded gauge from Chapter 2 an infinite supply of forensic material. Men have lost whole weekends to the viewer list. The rule is total. You read the radar for green lights, never for grievances. The moment you catch yourself investigating her activity like a detective with a corkboard, close the app and go touch iron. That impulse is the slot machine's lever, and the next chapter deals with the machine in full. 2 more pieces of venue craft. Migration. When the thread is alive and cooking, move it, Instagram, to WhatsApp, to the number, eventually to a voice. Each migration is a small escalation of realness, and her agreeing to it is investment. But don't collect platforms like trophies. The number is not the win. The meeting is the win. And honestly, the plan matters more than the platform it's typed on. We handle that endgame in the meat chapter. And thirst trap economics, stated once with clear eyes and no halo, because you asked me for the truth as far as it goes. The bikini story at peak hours, from a woman who never answers what arrives. You now know what that is. The harvest from Chapter 4, running on venue native tooling. Her right, her game, her crop, and your choice, every time, whether to be soil. The fire emoji you are about to send is a donation to a fund that pays no dividends and publishes its donor list. Keep your attention priced like your time, brother, expensive and mostly elsewhere. But no profile, no radar, no perfect story reply can protect you from the moment this venue manufactures better than any invention in courtship's history. The moment that owns you, the one we've been circling since page 1. She saw it, the clock says so, and nothing comes back. Next chapter, we walk into the silence itself, the scene, the spiral it detonates, and the protocol that gets your day back. This is the chapter I needed a man to read to me 15 years ago. Bring your worst memory. Mine's already there. Chapter 10. The Scene and the Spiral. Let's return to the scene of the crime. 5:21 in the afternoon. My message sitting there under its little gray receipt. Scene. And me, a grown, accomplished man, checking the phone the way I'd check a wound every 90 seconds, feeling the day drain out through a hole a stranger's thumb had made. I want to spend this chapter inside that exact half hour, because I've come to believe it's the most important half hour in a modern man's inner life. It's where the game is actually lost. Not in the opener, not in the tease, in the silence. And I'm going to do something no guru ever did for me. I'm going to take the silence apart. What the machine in your pocket is doing to you. What the silence actually means on her side. And then the protocol, minute by minute, for getting your day back. Because the day, brother, the day is what this was always about. Start with the machine, because you deserve to know what's being done to you on purpose. Behavioral scientists have known since B.F. Skinner's pigeons that the most addictive reward schedule ever discovered is not the reliable one, it's the variable one. Reward that arrives unpredictably, sometimes, maybe, who knows when, hooks deeper than reward that arrives every time. That's not a quirk, it's the architecture of the mammalian dopamine system, and a neuroscientist named Wolfram Schultz mapped why. Dopamine doesn't fire for pleasure. It fires for prediction error, for maybe, for almost, for the unresolved. A slot machine is a machine for manufacturing maybe. Now look at the glass in your hand. Her reply, variable. Its timing, variable. The checking gesture, identical. Pull, look, nothing. Pull, look, nothing. Each check a lever pull, each nothing a near miss that fires the circuit and loads the next pull. And the read receipt? Brother, the receipt is not a courtesy feature. Seen as the cherry stopping one window short of the jackpot. Engineered, A/B tested, shipped. Because your agitation is retention, and retention is revenue. Someone was paid a very good salary to make sure her silence hurts you at maximum resolution. So the first mercy of this chapter is just this. The checking loop was never a character flaw. It's a casino in your pocket, built by professionals, aimed at circuitry that never evolved a defense, and aimed, in men like us, at a gauge that was already wired wrong before the casino ever came to town. You're not weak. You're outgunned, which is why the answer is protocol, not willpower. But hold that thought. First, the silence itself. What does a scene actually mean? Here's where 15 years of my suffering turns out to be built on a reading error. When her silence landed, my mind produced exactly one interpretation. Instantly, with total confidence. Verdict. She reviewed me, and the review is in, and it's no. And every check of the phone was an appeal. Now put the auction floor from chapter 4 behind your eyes, and count the actual possibilities. She opened it mid-shift, mid-class, mid-conversation, and life swallowed the reply she meant to send. You've done this to people you like. She's saving it for when she can play properly. Women do this constantly with messages that deserve real answers. She's mid-episode, mid-drama, phone in hand but brain elsewhere. She's testing. Yes, sometimes the silence is a probe. Quality control from Chapter 6. Checking whether the framed man you've been all-thread turns into a question mark dispenser under pressure. Because the 40 always do. Or, and you have to hold this one with both hands, like a man. She's just not interested enough. And the silence is the soft no of a venue, where soft no is the house dialect. Here's the discipline. You cannot tell which one it is. Not from your side of the glass. Not with any amount of thread rereading. The data does not exist in your phone, and every hour you spend mining for it is an hour donated to the casino. But now notice the beautiful thing, the thing that sets you free. You don't need to know, because every single interpretation calls for the same move from you. If she got swallowed by life, pursuit adds pressure to a woman who owes nothing. If she's saving you for later, pursuit spends the anticipation she was enjoying. If it's a test, pursuit is the wrong answer, the only wrong answer. And if it's the soft no, pursuit converts her mild indifference into active cringe and your dignity into a screenshot. 4 doors, 1 move. Stillness. A scene is an answer only to one question. Should you chase? And the answer is never. So let it be law, the iron law, the one I broke at minute 27. A scene is never chased. No question mark on its own line. No hello? No witty little bump. The you still alive? That pretends it isn't a chase. She knows, brother. They always know. No, guess you're busy. No, did I say something? And no, never. Not once more in your life. The lecture. You know the lecture's anatomy now. Protest behavior. The toddler circuit. The beg in a suit. The 2 words that end files forever. When the thread deserves one more attempt, and sometimes it genuinely does, there is exactly one sanctioned move, and it runs like this. At least 3 days of total silence. Not 2, 3 days with weight in them. And then one message, sent as if the gap never existed. 0 reference to the silence, 0 accounting, built from the warmest material you banked. The callback. The goat story remains untold. You're lost so far. New energy, running story, closed loop of resentment, nowhere in sight. If that message also draws a scene, the thread is over. Delete it and mean the deletion. 1 knock, 1 revival, then you leave the porch. Anything past that second silence isn't persistence, brother. It's harassment shaped. And men like us don't loiter where we're not wanted, not because gurus say so, but because our time became expensive the day we got a mission. Now the part no book gave me, the part 1 needed at 521, the protocol for the spiral itself. Because the iron law governs your thumbs, but the fire in the chest doesn't read law. The alarm fires anyway. It's Chapter 2 hardware, ancient, innocent, illiterate, and in the first 10 minutes, the spiral either gets fuel or it dies. Here's the drill, and I want it as rehearsed as a fire escape. Minute 0. Name it out loud. The alarm is firing. That's the sociometer, not the truth. Naming it, effect labeling, moves the event from your chest to your hands. The feeling loses altitude the moment it has a name, and you're the one holding it. Minute 1. The phone leaves your body. Not face down on the desk. Out of the room, in a drawer, and the checking loop starves, because you cannot out-willpower a casino you're standing inside of. You can only walk out the doors. Minutes 2 through 10. Violent change of state. Iron if you can get to it. The floor and push-ups if you can't. A shower cold enough to insult you. A walk with your spine tall and your eyes off the pavement. The alarm is a body event, so answer it in the body's language. Burn the cortisol as fuel. Don't sip it as poison. And then the two prohibitions, absolute for 24 hours. No rereading the thread. The case is not being appealed. There is no new evidence in the old messages. And every reread is a lever pull, and no post-mortem in your skull after sundown. Rumination is just the checking loop running on internal hardware, the same casino with the lights off. If the analysis is worth doing, and sometimes it is, Autopsies built this book. It gets done once, on paper, days later, cold, the way we did the Be Respectful autopsy. What was the transmission? Which rule broke? What's the representative? That's not brooding, that's film study. The difference is a date, a page, and a purpose. And underneath the protocol, keep the two reframes turning, because they're what the reps eventually install as reflex. First, the scene is data about one bid in one auction on one afternoon. A stranger declined a price tag she read for 9 seconds through 2 panes of glass. She did not review your soul. She never saw it. And her thumb holds no verdict on the man your mother raised. Second, the harder one, from the wound chapter, and I'll say it as gently as truth allows. The day was never taken from you, brother. It was handed over. A thumb can't reach through glass. Only the gauge can hand it your day, and the gauge is yours, and it retrains. Rep by rep, protocol by protocol, scene by unanswered, scene until the afternoon comes, and it will come, when the receipt sits there gray and mute, and you notice it the way you notice weather in another city. I've had that afternoon. It's quiet. It tastes like nothing at all, and after 15 years, nothing at all tastes like freedom, which raises the real question, the one all this stillness has been protecting. If the when isn't her reply, and it was never her reply, what is it? Time to talk about the only thing a text thread is actually for. Next chapter. Text to meet, not to talk. The purpose, the pivot, the plan, and why the men who win the phone are the men trying hardest to get off it. Chapter 11. Text to meet, not to talk. Somewhere in my graveyard is a thread that ran 9 weeks. 9 weeks, brother. Hundreds of messages. Jokes that landed, late night talks, her telling me things she said she'd never told anyone. I knew her coffee order, her sister's drama, the name of her childhood dog. And in week 9, when I finally suggested we meet, there was a pause longer than any she'd ever taken. And then, I don't want to ruin what we have. What we have. Brother, we had a podcast. I was the host. She was the subscriber. And like all subscribers, she wanted new episodes, not a relationship with the host. That thread taught me the law this whole chapter hangs on, so let me carve it over the door. Texting has exactly one job, the meat. Everything else, the banter, the callbacks, the voice notes, all 10 rules of the grammar, is a bridge, and a bridge you build gorgeous and never walk across isn't game. It's architecture for pigeons. Why does the endless thread kill the thing it's trying to grow? 3 mechanisms, and you already own the parts. First, the sample problem. Every thread is a free sample of dating you, and a man who texts for weeks without moving is sampling as exactly that. A man who doesn't move. Comfortable, entertaining, and stationary. Second, text can't carry attraction's cargo. Chapter 3. The poorest channel. No voice, no eyes, no height, no presence, no smell of your neck at a table for two. Texting can build familiarity, and familiarity without presence curdles into the friend zone's digital wing. She knows your soul and has never felt your existence. Comfort Without Tension, Chapter 8 told you, is the podcast. Third, the auction never pauses. While you're composing episode 40, men with calendars are proposing Fridays. The pen pal always loses to the Friday night. You watched it happen to me in Chapter 1, 11 days against my 6 weeks. She wasn't fake, brother. The market was just open, and only one of us was bidding on it. So, the window. Warm threads have a shelf life, and it's shorter than your comfort wants it to be. From first message to proposed plan. Think days, not weeks. 2 to 5 days of good exchange on a warm connection. Faster on the apps, where attention spans are goldfish and the auction floor is literally paginated. Now, that clock is not an excuse to lunge. A plan proposed cold, before any charge exists, is the interviewer with a calendar. What you're stalking is the peak. The exchange where the laughing is real, the energy spikes, she's investing freely. The exact moment your training says exit on the high note. That's the moment, brother, not after it. The peak is the pivot. You're actually fun. This week, coffee or the arcade? Study the anatomy, because every word is load-bearing. A verdict, not a plea. You're actually fun is a prize being awarded from altitude, the qualified man paying off. A concrete frame. This week, 2 options, both led by you. And the 2-option close. Not are you free. Free is abstract and abstractions get maybes, but a choice between realities. She picks one, and the date exists. She counters, I can't this week, but next Tuesday? That's a yes wearing logistics. Lock Tuesday. She goes vague. Haha, yeah, we should. One reframe, one only. Cool. Thursday, 7. That place with the lights. In or out? And if vague survives a clean, specific 2-option close and a direct reframe, that's your answer, brother. A no wearing a calendar. File it, walk, threads over as a project. What happens next, if anything, happens from her side. She said yes. Now don't blow it, because here is where recovered nice guys relapse. The plan exists, and he starts polishing it. Checking in, reconfirming twice, sending a paragraph about how he's really looking forward to it, texting her nightly until Thursday, like a hotel confirming a reservation. Brother, the plan is made. The selling is over. Between the yes and the day, run the thread thin and warm, a callback, an open loop, one line, maybe nothing at all, and nothing is fine. Day of, one text, logistics only, written like it's the 4th time you've done this month. Still on for 7. Wear shoes you can lose an arcade game in. Confident, assumptive, a smirk in the syntax. No question mark doing anxious labor. No essays. Ever. And when the plan wobbles, because it will, here's the manual. The reschedule with a counteroffer. Can't do Thursday, Saturday work? Is a yes. Take Saturday with 0 sulk in the transcript. The pure cancel, sorry, something came up. Gets grace, once, and altitude, no stress. Rain check. And then, this is the part that separates you from the 40. You do not repropose. The next plan arrives from her side, or it doesn't arrive. 1 cancel is life. 2 cancels is an answer. And you know how we treat answers now. What never happens, under any weather? The Flake Lecture. No, I guess you're too busy. No thanks for wasting my week. No invoice of your dashed excitement. That's protest behavior with a calendar attached, the Be Respectful circuit, and we buried that man. Her cancel costs you nothing that was yours. Your Thursday was already good. Iron Brothers, Mission. The date was a bonus on a full day, and that's not a line you perform. It's a life you built, and it's why flakes stopped hurting somewhere around the month the gym got serious. 2 more pieces of the end game. The escalation ladder. Text is the bottom rung, and every rung up is a richness upgrade you now understand scientifically. Voice note, then the phone call. Yes, an actual call. 2 minutes, made from a life in motion, to settle logistics with a voice that's calm and low and slightly amused. For a generation raised on typing, a comfortable phone call is a costly signal so rare it lands like a superpower. Never argue by text, brother. Not before the date, not after, not ever in the relationship that may follow. Text conflict is a courtroom with no judge, where tone is assigned by the angriest reader. Anything heavier than logistics and play gets a voice or gets nothing. And the post-date text, so you don't fumble at the goal. The day after, 1 message, assumptive and warm, 0 performance review. Not, I had a really great time, did you? That's the interviewer back from the dead, requesting feedback. Instead, a callback to the night's best beat. Still thinking about the way you lost that arcade game. Twice. The running story continued. If it went well, plan 2 builds on the same rhythm. Peak, pivot, plan, and between dates, keep the phone in its place. Thin, warm, playful. The relationship happens in rooms now, brother. The thread is just the hallway between them. One last thing, and it's the bridge out of the phone entirely, because I'd be a fraud if I ended this chapter pretending the glass is the whole game. Every principle in this book, frame, grammar, the peak, the walk, was born offline, and offline is where it pays its real wages. The man who can hold a woman's eyes in daylight, open his mouth with a steady voice, and be turned down without bleeding. That man doesn't need 40 threads, and the nerve to do it is built the same way everything in this book is built. Reps, small, and daily, which is exactly what the program, 2 chapters from now, will drill into your week. The phone is the minor leagues, brother. Great place to train the swing, tragic place to retire. But before the program, 1 more skill, the one that flips the entire courtroom for good. This whole chapter assumes she's worth the plan. Half the graveyard in your pocket died because that assumption went unexamined. Wrong women, kept alive by a man so grateful for replies, he never once asked the question she was asking about him the whole time. Is this person worth my Thursday? Next chapter, you learn to ask it. Screening, brother. The buyer finally reads the label. Chapter 12. Screening her back. Here's a question I never once asked in 15 years of texting women, and the not asking explains half my graveyard. Is she actually worth my attention? Not is she pretty. Prettiness got her through the door of my eyes, the bar every woman in the thread had already cleared. I mean worth it. Her conduct, her investment, her interest, her cost. I never asked, because the wounded gauge had me running a one-directional courtroom. Me on trial, her on the bench, every thread an audition, with me auditioning. A reply was a verdict in my favor. Who cross-examines the judge? And so I spent years pouring premium attention into women a healthy man would have walked from by Tuesday. Not because they were villains, but because I was a buyer who never read a single label. This chapter installs the missing half of the game, the buyer's eyes. You've spent 11 chapters learning what you transmit. Now we read her transmission, Because she has one, brother. It's printing constantly, and it never lies for long. Start with the master metric, and let it reorganize everything. Investment. Not words, investment. Words are the cheap signal. Hers as much as yours. The same Zahavi logic you learned about your own messages runs in both directions. A woman's real interest shows up as spent resources, length, effort, initiative, time. So read the ledger cold. Does she ask you anything? A woman with 0 questions across a whole thread is a woman consuming, not exploring. You're content, brother, not a candidate. Does she ever initiate, ever reopen a thread after dead air, ever reply to your story first? Does her latency ever hurry for you, replies that arrive fast when she could have waited? Does she qualify herself? I'm actually really good at that. No, but I'm not like that, I swear. Little resume lines offered unprompted. Qualification is the tell of tells. A woman selling is a woman who's decided you're worth buying. Squint at the shape of the thread. The same squint from chapter 3, pointed the other way. If her side is gray gravel against your measured lines, week after week, the shape is her answer, and shapes don't flirt. And weigh signals by cost, always. One reply to your story outweighs 50 likes. A voice note outweighs 100 ha-has. A proposed Tuesday outranks 1,000 we should hang out sometimes. The expensive signals are the true ones. It's the oldest law in the book, and it reads her as accurately as it reads you. Now the field guide, because the auction floor has recurring characters, and 15 years of donations, makes me a certified expert in every one. The validation farmer replies just enough to keep your attention flowing. The 2-word answer every second day, warm enough to hope on, thin enough to cost her nothing, and has declined or deflected every single move toward a meeting, forever. You know the harvest from chapter 4. Now recognize when the crop is you. The test is beautiful in its simplicity. Propose the clean plan. The peak pivot 2 options close. Farmers never pick an option. Farmers reschedule the question itself. The breadcrumber, her cousin, goes cold for 9 days. Then, hey stranger, miss our talks. A single warm crumb, dropped precisely when your attention was successfully detaching, because the farm noticed the crop walking off. That crumb is not longing, brother. It's re-engagement marketing, the app's own retention playbook run by hand. The therapy client messages you nightly, heavy, real, endless, about her stress, her family, her ex, feels profound, feels chosen. Read the ledger instead. Intimacy flowing one direction, on her schedule, with your Thursdays never once making the agenda. You've been cast, unpaid, in a role. The emotional service animal with a data plan, and the role has no promotion track. And the perpetual scheduler, genuinely warm, actually enthusiastic, yes to everything, and somehow, across 2 months, never once free. Excuses always plausible. Counters never offered. Hear the law. Interested women relocate obstacles. Uninterested women describe them in lovely detail. A no wearing a calendar is still a no, and you learned last chapter how many vagues it's allowed before you file it. Then there are the tests, and these deserve their own paragraph, because a test is the one cold signal that's secretly warm. When she pokes the frame, you probably text this to every girl. Bet you're a player, you're kind of full of yourself, or the classic slow fade reply delay right after a great exchange. Remember chapter 6 from the other side of the glass. Testing is quality control, and nobody quality tests a product they've already decided against. A test means the file on you is open and being written. Your job is the bin you already know. Play, never crumble, never counterattack. Every girl, alphabetically. You made the cut. B section. Delivered from altitude, the test passes, and the charge climbs. What you never do is explain the earnest, "No, I'm really not." Like that paragraph is crumble in written form, and it fails tests retroactively, 3 of them at once. But calibration, always, know the difference between a test and a fence. A test has energy in it. It arrives mid-game, wrapped in play or heat. A fence is flat. The one-word replies that never vary, the plans that never land. Tests get play. Fences get respected and walked away from. A man who can't tell flirt resistance from real disinterest ends up either folding at every test or pushing at every wall, and one of those makes him a coward, while the other makes him a creep. The reps will teach your ear the difference faster than any paragraph can, and when the ledger comes back empty, the farmer confirmed, the fence flat, the shape gray, comes the skill that this entire chapter was secretly building toward, the walk. Here's how the walk works, and it's the shortest technique in the book. Silently. No announcement. No, I see what this is. No good luck with everything. No essay explaining what she lost. Brother, look at that impulse under bright light and recognize it, because it's our old friend. The exit lectures the Be Respectful circuit wearing a dignity costume. One last invoice, served on a woman who never signed the contract, begging her, one final time, to certify that you mattered. She doesn't owe the certificate, and the man I'm building doesn't request it. He just stops. Reallocates the attention, the way capital leaves a bad investment. No press conference, no revenge posting, no mourning period performed in stories for her radar. And here's what makes the walk not just clean, but easy. The mechanism under the whole chapter. The pipeline. Abundance, brother. The thing the auction taught us. Scarcity is why men can't walk. One thread carrying a man's entire hope becomes load-bearing, and nobody walks away from a load-bearing wall. Keep the reps up. The openers, the story replies, the approaches the next chapter will drill, and no single thread ever again holds enough of your hope to blackmail you with it. The walk gets cheap, and the moment walking gets cheap, everything upstream of it gets strong. Your frame under silence, your teasing, your plans, your tests. All of it stands taller the instant every thread knows, somehow, that you can leave. One closing note, on tone, because I promised you clear eyes without poison, and this chapter walked the edge of the pit. The farmer, the breadcrumber, the scheduler, cataloging them is not an indictment of women, brother. It's an indictment of unread labels. She's running her side of an economy the same way you ran yours, with the incentives she was handed, the armor her inbox taught her, and her own error management software humming under it all. Some of her coldness is protection from men worse than you. Some is farming. From your side of the glass, the difference is often invisible. And here's the liberation. You don't need to see it. You don't need to diagnose her heart. You only need to read her investment and price your attention accordingly, the exact discipline she's been applying to you since the follow. Screening isn't cynicism, it's symmetry. It's the moment the auction finally has 2 buyers in the room. And brother, you have no idea yet how differently a woman plays when she senses the label being read. Philosophy's done now. Every principle is on the table, every corpse buried, every mechanism mapped. What's left is the part that actually changes a man, the part no book can do for you, but this one can at least schedule, the reps. Next chapter is the program. 30 days, laid out morning by morning. The audit, the phone rules, the drills for your thumbs, and the drills for the wound. Bring a calendar, brother. The reading is over. Chapter 13. The 30-Day Rebuild. Everything you've heard so far is worth nothing. I mean that precisely. Understanding is the cheapest currency in self-improvement. I understood my own patterns for years while repeating them nightly, because Insight Without Reps is a documentary about a man, not a man. So this chapter is the program. 30 days, laid out like a training block, drills for the thumbs and drills for the wound, because we established in Chapter 2 that there are 2 machines to fix and only one of them is a phone. Do it as written, not the parts you like as written. The parts you want to skip are load-bearing. They always are. Days 1 through 3, the audit. Before new habits, evidence. Open your last 10 dead threads, the real graveyard, the ones that still sting, and count 4 numbers per thread on paper. Your questions versus hers. Your total words versus hers. Your average reply speed versus hers. And who sent the last message? 10 threads, 40 numbers, and then sit with what the shape says, because for most of us it says the same thing mine said, a decade of applying. Next, find your be respectful. Somewhere in that graveyard is your version of my 2 famous words, the protest text, the lecture, the triple message spiral, the paragraph at 1 a.m., find the worst one. Read it once cold, the way you'd read another man's. Name which chapter it came from. Protest behavior, borrowed knife, covert contract, and write 1 sentence, what the transmission actually said. That message is your before photo, brother. You'll want it on day 90. Last, name your era, interviewer or knife, sugar or pepper, because your era determines which drills below will feel impossible, and the impossible feeling drills are yours. Also days 1 through 3. In parallel, the phone gets renovated because you cannot white-knuckle a casino. You exit it structurally. Notifications off for every messaging and social app. Not silenced. Off. The lever gets removed from your pocket. Checking happens in 2 windows, noon and evening, by appointment, like a man reviewing mail rather than an addict pulling a slot. No phone for the first hour of the morning. The morning belongs to the mission block, and if you don't have a mission block, that's your first morning's work. And a curfew. Nothing gets typed to any woman after midnight. Nothing, ever. The 1 a.m. message is written by a lonelier, dumber, thirstier man wearing your thumbs, and the program simply removes his shift. Days 4 through 14. The discipline block. Subtraction before addition, because the graveyard was dug mostly by excess. 5 standing rules, active from day 4 to day 30, and ideally to your funeral. Rule 1, brevity. Every message drafted, then cut in half, then sent. 4-line ceiling, no exceptions. Anything bigger is a voice note, a call, or nothing. Rule 2, the ratio. 3 statements minimum per question. Catch yourself mid-interview and convert the question to an assumption before sending. Rule 3, honesty of latency. Reply when your life actually allows, never instantly by reflex, and never delayed by stopwatch theater. The training wheel here is simple. Finish the thing you were doing first, always. The phone waits for the set, the page, the meal, the man. Rule 4, the iron law. Now with a number. 0 chase texts for 30 days. Not 1 scene pursued. Not 1 question mark on its own line. Not 1 bump, no matter what, no matter her, no matter how special the thread. And when the alarm fires, and it will, you run the spiral protocol from Chapter 10 like a fire drill. Name it, phone out of the room, 10 minutes of iron or cold water, no rereads for 24 hours. Rule 5, endings, once a day. Be the one who ends a conversation. Any conversation. Her, your boys, your mother, one beat before it wants to end. Warmly, first. You're training the exit muscle, and it trains fast. And here, days 4 through 14, is where this program leaves every texting course on the market. The wound reps from Chapter 2, because the gauge retrains exactly one way. Evidence. Rep 1, the performance fast. Once a day, one full conversation. With anyone, and the boys count double in which you do not perform. No joke told for the laugh, no story upgraded for effect, no scanning faces for the verdict. You just attend. Ask the thing you're actually curious about. Say the plain true thing or nothing. Let a silence sit without diving on it like a grenade. It will feel like walking without a phone in your hand feels. Naked, then normal, then, around day 10, I promise you this specific dawn, like rest. And you will make the discovery that unravels the 15-year lie. Nobody leaves the room. The conversation survives your normalcy, brother. The boys stay, the room holds. Boring never comes. What you feared was your insufficiency was only ever the strain. And the proof arrives not from a book, but from your own logged Tuesdays, which is the only proof a gauge accepts. Rep 2. The daily no. Once a day, decline something small you'd usually people please through. The plan you don't want, the request that eats your mission block, the opinion you'd usually swallow. Politely, plainly, no essay attached. The gauge learns that disapproval is survivable by surviving it, in low doses, daily vaccination, not theory. Rep 3, posture and eyes. In every hallway, order and checkout line. Spine tall, eyes steady, greeting first with a voice from the chest. Costs nothing, compounds everything. This is the body's share of the identity work, and the body reports back to the gauge nightly. Days 15 through 30. The game block. Addition, now that subtraction has cleared the ground. The daily opener rep. One new conversation started per day, and the story reply is your primary vector. One line into someone new's story built by the grammar, observation or tease, sideways, surface wink, statement first, no compliments on faces, no fire emojis, and then you're gone. No follow-up if it dies. It dies most of the time, brother. That's not failure, that's the auction. And the representative was never her reply. The representative was your nerve firing on schedule. Track sends, not outcomes. The weekly voice note, at least 20 seconds at a thread's peak, relaxed and midlife. The weekly real-world set, at least one open in the flesh. A genuine word to a stranger, any age, any gender, any register, because the phone is the minor leagues and the nerve transfers. If a full approach is beyond the current nerve, the representative is eye contact, a smile, and one sentence, and the bar rises weekly. The craft quota, per active thread, one tease, one callback, one open loop per conversation, consciously, clunkily if necessary, until the grammar stops being counted and starts being spoken. And the pivot quota, the one that makes it all real. Any thread still alive on day 4 of its life gets the plan. Peak, pivot, 2 options, concrete, every time. No thread enters week 2 unpivoted, because we do not build architecture for pigeons anymore. Track 2 numbers only. Plans proposed, and dates had. Those are the game's only box scores. Replies, likes, streaks, viewers, casino chips, all of it. Leave them on the floor. In parallel, week 3, one evening. The profile renovation from Chapter 9, executed as a checklist, face visible and lit, motion and tribe on the grid, thirst deleted, comment trail scrubbed, 2 to 3 honest stories a week from a life that, because of the mission block, the iron, the reps, is finally generating footage worth broadcasting. You can't photograph a life you don't have, which is why this program keeps insisting you have one. And the relapse clause, because you're a man, not a program, you will break a rule. You'll chase a scene on day 19, perform like a circus on day 22, reread a thread at midnight like an old detective on a closed case. When it happens, no ceremony, no self-flagellation, no starting over from day 1. Screenshot it, add it to the audit page, name the chapter it came from, next representative. Shame is just rumination wearing a whistle, brother, and rumination is the casino with the lights off. The program's answer to failure is the same as iron's answer. Log it, load the bar again. Day 30. You rerun the audit on your 10 most recent threads and put the numbers side by side, and the numbers will have moved. Mine did, embarrassingly far. But hear the real timeline like a man. 30 days installs the disciplines. 60 makes the grammar automatic. By 90, the counting falls away, and what remains isn't rules. It's just how you text, how you stand, how you leave. The training wheels come off because the balance moved into the body, and somewhere out past that, not on any calendar I can print, comes the day this was always for. The day the phone goes quiet on you, and nothing in your chest moves at all. Last chapter, brother. Let me show you what that day looks like from the inside. Chapter 14. The Man She Texts Back. Let me tell you about a Tuesday, a few years after the 5/21 Tuesday, because you've earned the ending, and the ending is true. A woman I genuinely liked. Not a thread, not a rep. A woman whose laugh I could pick out of a crowded room, left my message on scene for a full day. A message with a small risk in it, the kind the old me would have drafted 4 times. Scene, mid-morning, and then nothing. Through lunch, through the afternoon, through the evening. And here is the entire miracle, the one this whole book was walking toward. I noticed it the way you notice weather in another city. The alarm gave one distant turn. Old hardware, it never fully retires. And the day just continued. The lift happened. The work got done. Dinner with a friend, the good kinda tired. And late that evening, her reply arrived. An apology. A paragraph. More warmth than the silence had cost. And I read the whole shape of it with a slow smile, because I recognized the shape. Her side was long. Mine had been light. Somewhere along the way, without a single trick, the diagram had flipped. The man whose whole day once hung from a stranger's thumb had become a man whose silence made someone else's evening tilt. I want to be surgical about what changed, because it would be easy to hear that story wrong. She didn't reply because my message was clever. My messages, brother, I tell you the strange truth about them now, got almost boring by the end. Short, warm, unstrategic. Half the grammar I taught you eventually dissolves into something that just looks like ease. No, she replied, because of what stood behind the words. A man mid-mission, whose mornings were spoken for. A man who had ended 100 conversations one beat early and survived 100 silences without typing into them. A man who could be normal in a room, just present, just himself, unperforming, and had learned from logged evidence that nobody leaves. The words were ordinary. The sender had changed, and you know from chapter 3 that the sender is the message. It was always going to be won or lost there, never in the phrasing. So walk the whole arc with me one last time. because you now own every piece of it. The graveyard taught you that both costumes, the sugar and the pepper, die the same death, because need reads as need through any seasoning. The wound chapter found the machine under the need, a gauge, ancient and innocent, wired in your unchosen years to a single input, screaming verdicts it was never qualified to deliver. Then the mirror, she reads the transmission, not the text. The metadata is the message. The auction, her silence was almost never about you, because you were never being read in a quiet room. The autopsies, the interview, the essay, the instant reply, the borrowed knife, the plagiarized wit, every corpse tagged, every mechanism named. Then the build. Frame. The postures of a man whose day cannot be confiscated. Grammar. Statements. Brevity. Tension. The tease with the wink. Loops. Callbacks. Exits on peaks. The venue and its radar. The scene. The casino in your pocket. And the protocol that walks you out of it. The pivot. Text to meet. Never to talk. Because the phone is a hallway, not a room. Screening, the buyer's eyes, the ledger, the silent walk. And the program, the only chapter that ever changed anyone, provided the man does the reps instead of admiring them. And now the last confession, the one I saved. Once a year, maybe less, I open the old thread. It's still there. I never deleted it. A man should keep one artifact of the museum he escaped. I read the interview questions, the borrowed neg, her "Are you Einstein?" I read the whole 27 minutes of silence. I can still feel their temperature. And then those 2 words, sitting at the bottom like a signature on a confession. Be respectful. And where I used to feel a hot wire of shame, brother, I now feel something I can only call tenderness. Because I finally see the boy who typed it. 15 years he'd been begging rooms to tell him he was enough, performing for women, for men, for strangers with thumbs. And that afternoon he did the only thing he knew. He begged one more time in writing from a girl who owed him nothing. He wasn't cruel. He was starving. And no reply she could have sent. No reply anyone could ever have sent would have fed him, because the respect he was demanding from a stranger was the respect he had never once granted himself. She owed me nothing, brother. I owed me everything. That is the entire book in 8 words, and it took me 15 years and 1 gray receipt to read them. So here is what I want for you at the end of all this. Not the perfect text. There was never a perfect text. The search for it was the disease wearing a keyboard. Not even her reply, whoever your her is tonight, whatever thread is glowing in your pocket right now with its little gray receipt. What I want for you is the Tuesday, the one where the silence lands and nothing in your chest moves, the one where your day cannot be handed over, because the hand that used to do the handing is busy, with iron, with work, with men who rate you, with a life that generates its own footage. The one where being normal in a room feels like rest, where your jokes are overflow instead of extraction, where you end the conversation first, warm and easy, and walk back into your evening without checking anything at all. They will still call you names on the way there. Too cocky, too distant, too much. Player's gonna play. Let them, brother. You've read the file on names by now. They're just tests, and you know the bends. And when the change comes, and it comes quiet, rep by rep, no fireworks, just one Tuesday that tastes like nothing, you'll notice something almost funny about the phone. The threads answer themselves now. The replies come back. The diagram flipped while you were busy living, because it was never a texting problem, brother. It was a self problem wearing a texting costume, and you have finally stopped auditioning. Stop searching for the message she can't ignore. Become the man she can't. You were never one clever line away. You were one identity away. Go do the reps. The phone will figure itself out. And somewhere out there on a Tuesday, a woman is going to read 3 unremarkable words from you and feel her whole evening tilt. And you, brother, you'll be at the gym, or deep in the work, or laughing with your people, phone silent in another room, at last, needing nothing from it,